Alright guys, this is Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my review for the movie Minari. Alright, so this is another one that I really wanted to check out as part of my kind of series of reviews here that I'm doing for the Oscars contenders, the contending films for the awards this year. I was really looking forward to this one. This is now the third one that I've done. So far we've done Judas and the Black Messiah, One Night in Miami so far. Those were just the last couple of weeks. And my goal is to hopefully do one a week here, right? So it should be about 9 or 10 films that I'll be fitting in before the actual Oscars happen in April. And it'll be really interesting too because the nominations for the Oscars are coming up, I believe, the 15th of March. And so we'll actually have a little bit of window in there where, some of these films that I'm reviewing, I'll actually know what they've been nominated for. And so that's going to really kind of shape that discussion around, what the chances are of them, getting nominated and winning, right? We can talk about some of that stuff. So, yeah, just a really interesting time ahead of us here for this Oscar race. A little bit later, of course, usually the Oscars would be, done and over by now. But, of course, they've been delayed. And so, yeah, really interesting. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts of this one. I had pretty high expectations going into this film. I've heard a lot of good things. And, of course, this one's first premiered and people first saw it over a year ago now. So it has a kind of an interesting journey, and I'll touch on that in just a little bit. But yeah, I'd love to hear when you guys saw this one and what kind of experience you had with it. If you did get a chance to see it earlier than its release this weekend, and all that stuff. So love to hear your guys' thoughts on it, of course. And if you enjoyed this review, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel as well. I would really appreciate that. So, basically, this one, I'll start off with just a little bit of a recap of the film. What we're about here. Who's in it, that kind of stuff. And then I'll touch on my kind of non-spoiler, just overall thoughts of this one. So if you haven't seen the film, that'll be perfectly fine. Just kind of giving my kind of recommendations and my kind of my kind of log line, I like to call it, of my my thoughts and what I really kind of got out of the film. And then we'll go into spoilers. So I do want to have kind of a lengthy spoiler discussion of this one, talking about some of the themes, some of the events, and especially the ending. So, if you haven't seen the movie yet, or if you haven't seen all of it, anything like that, maybe, come back to this one after you have for that. But I will give a warning for that when we get there. So, this film is written and directed by Lee Isaac Chung, who had his first feature film, I believe, Manurangabo is what it's called. Probably mispronouncing that one, but it is around the events of the Rwandan genocide, I believe, or at least that period, and it follows 2 children. I believe that's the focus of it. And so he really got his start with this one because it was a big festival hit. I believe it won the top award at Cannes, or at least did very well there. And so it's been an interesting journey, and I believe Minari is only his 4th feature-length film that Lee Isaac Chung has made, and it's also the first one that he has written and directed solely by himself. All of his other films so far have been co-written. So yeah, a really interesting kind of journey for him, and definitely looking forward to what he does next after this one. He's had a lot of success, at least festival-wise, and hopefully we'll see at the Oscars, really, really big success for him. Really awesome stuff. So this one stars Steven Yeun, Yeri Han, Alan S. Kim, Noel Kate Cho, Will Patton, and Ye Jung Yoon. So this one takes place in the 1980s, or around that time, and follows a Korean-American family who moved to Arkansas to start a farm and pursue their own American dream. And of course, this one is partly based on Lee Isaac Chung's own upbringing, so I think this one is a bit of a reflection for him, as a writer. Obviously not everything I think was real, but it's all kind of based in his own experiences. And he did really grow up in Arkansas on a farm. So it is really a kind of semi autobiographical type of film, and or at least the story behind it. So that's really interesting too. But yeah, so that's kind of the premise we're working with for this one. So on to kind of my overall thoughts. So this film had a very interesting journey because it first premiered at Sundance, like I said, back in February of 2020. So it's actually been over a year now since it first premiered and people first saw this thing. and it won the Grand Jury Prize, the top award at Sundance for 2020. And so that was really interesting because it got a lot of buzz around that time in Sundance, and won this big award, and that's pretty meaningful, right? Like TIFF, Sundance, New York Film Festival, there's just a few festivals that are really big and really, have an impact on the Oscars and that conversation. And they did really, really well, and they won the top award. And now it's finally being wide released, basically a year later, more than a year later now, February 26th of 2021. And of course, it's A24, right, that actually basically acquired the movie and is now releasing it. So really interesting there. And I know A24 has had a lot of films that have been kind of indie, kind of just on the outskirts of the Oscar kind of conversation. Uncut Gems is a great example from last year. And so it's really kind of an interesting journey that it's had now with A24 picking it up and, having it released, more than a year later, right? So since Sundance, the film has continued to receive a lot of positive reactions from critics and various award bodies, making it a pretty obvious awards contender for the Oscars this year, especially with the kind of year that it is, right? With a lot of the big kind of movies that everybody expected to be here not even releasing, right? So definitely, I think in a normal year, I'm not sure that this one would be as high in the conversation. I think it deserves to be, but I just don't think it would, because it is more of an indie kind of film. That's a smaller smaller concept type of thing. None of these cast members are that recognizable. Lee Isaac Chung, obviously not a huge profile director. But this year, for sure, it is definitely in there in the conversation. And I'm really glad it is, because I think this did give it an opportunity that it may not have had otherwise. So going into the film, my expectations were actually pretty high, since I've been hearing really good things about this for a while now, right? First, I heard about the news at Sundance last year, and I kind of forgot about it, right? And then as it was getting closer to this year, I heard more about it and just more good things. It's always been positive things. So I must say, I had pretty high expectations for this one. And this one, I think, exceeded those expectations. That's how good it was to me. Really, really enjoyed this one. So at its core, this film tells a fairly cliche story, right? Basically resilience, perseverance, this type of thing. Of course, in the context of achieving the American dream. And it's not the first film to tackle this kind of story or these kind of themes, but I think it still manages to offer a lot of nuance here, and even tackles some more unique themes that aren't always explored in these types of movies, or in a lot of movies, right? And I think it is really, really good at doing that. And so when you first see a film and you see how cliche, the story is, or, you kind of think, oh, I've seen that before. The most important thing that it can do then, right, if it wants to be at that next level, is provide some nuance, be different, right? And I really think this film succeeds at doing that. So through great performances all around, a very well-crafted script, and some impressive direction throughout this one, the film delivers an incredibly wholesome story that is both emotionally captivating and genuinely funny as well. And as a result, this film successfully carves out its own place in this commonly explored subgenre, as I said, the whole kind of American dream, resilience, immigrant kind of story that we've seen before. But I really think it carves its own place in that space, and it's definitely one of the best films of the year. So those are my thoughts on this one, non-spoilers, kind of my just overall thoughts. Now, I will give my spoiler warning at this point, so if you haven't seen the film, maybe come back to this when you do, or if you're open to it, you can stick around for sure. But anyways, now we'll get into a bit of a spoiler discussion. Alright, so now let's get into a little bit of a discussion, talking a little bit about spoilers and a little bit more about the specifics of this film. So first off, great performances. I always start with talking about the performances, with these reviews, and these were just great performances all around. There was not really a single one that was, it wasn't like a Daniel Kaluuya in Judas, right? Where that just kind of completely stole the show and is really the main focus of the movie. Even in One Night in Miami, right? Having Leslie Odom Jr. or Kingsley Ben-Adir, this one just seems so well-rounded. Just everybody a part of this cast did such a good job in their own roles. Stephen Yeun, obviously, he's kind of the biggest awards contender, or at least kind of like, the face of the movie, I would say. Of course, Yo Jung-yoon, I'm going to get to, obviously he's a big awards contender, but Stephen Yeun, kind of the face of this one and more or less our lead character. He's great. He is great. I obviously love Stephen Yeun from The Walking Dead, a huge Walking Dead fan, and he did such a good job on The Walking Dead. And now that I look back to it, in hindsight now, because he was even in the conversation, or at least, a lot of people were talking about it, of him being in the conversation for an Oscar nomination for Burning. And I believe that was 2 years ago or last year, which was a Korean film, Burning. So he was in the conversation for a lead actor nom then. Now he's firmly in the conversation. It looks like he's probably going to get a lead actor nom. We'll get to more of that in a little bit. But he is so great in The Walking Dead. And like I said, in hindsight now, he was definitely one of the best actors on the show. He was really, really good. And you can't say that about the whole cast in The Walking Dead, right? Like it is, a lot of it is really kind of specific characters. The actors don't really have a lot of range and depth, but Stephen Yeun always showed that. And he's just so great. And I'm so happy to see him doing so well and succeeding at this level, at getting an Oscar nomination. Like, that's just something I never would have thought, seeing him in The Walking Dead from the beginning. And then, as the series went on, and as I saw him be as good as he is, now to see him here is just fantastic. And he is so great in this movie. Again, the emotional, I believe he probably has the most emotional scenes, or the most kind of range in that way, in the movie. And you just really, really connect to that character and really feel for him when he is, hitting rock bottom, in this film, and he's struggling, and he's, putting in all this work, and he's just not seeing the results. And you really connect with that character, and really, like I said, the emotional scenes really hit hard. He also has some really great comedic stuff, though, too, in this film. Not as much as some of the other actors, for sure, but definitely a lot of good comedy as well from him, and he's so great at that as well. So really, really can't say enough about Stephen Yeun in this one. Absolutely great, and I'd love to see him where he is now. Also, Alan Kim is perhaps the most memorable of the entire cast, who plays the young boy David. This little kid is so good, so good. And I believe it's the Critics' Choice, right, that has that category of best new actor or best upcoming actor, something like that. And I really hope he wins that, because he was just so good in this one. And for a child actor too, like just on the next level, really, and just played that character so perfectly. Obviously, the writing did help a little bit. I think it was a really well written character, and I think obviously David is Lee Isaac Chung, right? In the way that he's telling his own story, pretty much. He is the little boy in this story. I don't think he's not Stephen Yeun's character, right? He is the little boy David. And I think the writing obviously helps him, but I think Alan Kim is so great in this role. Just awesome. And again, the scenes with him and Yo Jung-yoon are just so great. And a lot of good comedy comes out of that for sure. And again, though, the emotional scenes, there's not a lot of them for him, but in those scenes where you're supposed to feel for him, you're supposed to feel bad for him, especially, with his heart condition and his health, he really, really gets you to feel that, and through his performance. Just really, really awesome stuff. Noah Kate Cho, who plays Anne, right, the David's sister, or the daughter, is also really good for a child actor. Not on an insane level, but for a child actor, I think she's really, really good as well. Not as much to do really, because I feel like she's more of just kind of the level-headed character through the whole film. There's maybe one or two scenes where she, shows any kind of range or depth or anything like that. But just, really great in that role, right? And again, for somebody who's that young to be that good in that type of role is really impressive as well. Yuri Han is good. I don't see a lot of people talking about her, who plays the wife Monica. She's great as well. Really great. And there's the one scene where her and Steven Yeun, Jacob and Monica are basically talking about breaking up, right? After they go to the city and they go to the hospital for David, and then Jacob gets the deal with the Korean market guy, and that scene I think she was really, really great in, along with Steven Yeun, and I think they had some really great chemistry on screen, even though they were pretty much fighting the entire time they were on screen together. Really, really impressive stuff. So yeah, I think in parts, really, really great. And in the rest of the film, she didn't have a lot to do, but still really great. So, Will Patton as well, really great. And I'll get to this when I get to my Oscar chances discussion a little bit later, but I think a supporting actor nomination is worthy for Will Patton here. I don't know. Maybe I'm just completely, off base with this one. I haven't seen really many people talk about it, but he is so great as this kind of veteran who has, I'm not sure if he was, actually kind of a little bit off or a little bit, kind of an odd guy before, or that maybe just happened as a result of war and his condition, afterwards coming home. But either way, so great in that character, and a lot of comedy comes from that character as well. But also, you feel really bad for the guy as well in a lot of the scenes, and he's so great at kind of getting you to connect with that character. Just really great, and it is kind of a relatable character from a writing standpoint, where there's always kind of that guy in a small town or a small community, that's kind of an outsider or an outcast, and again, he just plays that character so well. Again, really, really great, but I'll talk more about him later. Yoo Jung-yoon steals the show. From the moment she arrives, the grandma comes in, the movie changes. It really does, and it becomes more of a comedic, a lot more levity in it. And again, the scenes between Alan Kim, David, and the grandma are just some of the best scenes of the year, I want to say, in film. Just an excellent job that Yoo Jung-yoon did as the grandma. And I think as well, the first part of the first two acts of the movie, right, where she is just the grandma and she seems healthy, right? She is good, but I think it's the part, especially in the last act of the film, where she has the stroke and she's, not the same. That is some really impressive acting, and I think she really does do a great job at showing that and depicting that. Just a really excellent job at the end, and such an emotional, kind of sequence there towards the end with her, and she does such a great job. So anyways, all that being said, the performance in this one are so great. Even the child actors are on the next level here. Just excellent stuff here. So, I will say, tells a fairly cliche story. I said this off the top, but I think it still offers a lot of nuance. Like I said, this is not the first movie that we've seen of, kind of this immigrant story pursuing the American dream. And these definitely not the first one we've seen of resilience, perseverance, hitting rock bottom and, figuring a way to recover, right? Something that came to mind right away was The Pursuit of Happiness, something like that, right? Where it's, you hit rock bottom, you have nothing, and then you kind of have to go up from there, hard work, all that kind of stuff, right? Not the first film we've seen, but I do think this one depicts the American dream as kind of a continuing challenge, where most stories follow this kind of story, right? You hit rock bottom, and then you through hard work, through perseverance, you got to be resilient. And at the end of the film, usually some kind of miracle happens, or, they're finally able to achieve success and they find it, right? They find the American dream. But this one, the ending of this film is not that. It really just shows them drilling the new well, right? So they hire the guy, he comes back, they drill a new well, and they're just kind of continuing to persevere, right? They're just going to be resilient. They're going to keep trying this, drill the new well, get, because all the crops are pretty much dead, right? I believe, or at least all the, product that they had from the crops. And, they're drilling a new well, and they got to start over now, and they're going to keep pushing forward. So I think this is a much more realistic and nuanced look at the common story, because it is more realistic that, a miracle doesn't happen, or, this big event doesn't happen. And yeah, it is just a constant challenge, right? It is just, a continuing thing that happens. And a lot of the time, of course, they don't achieve the American dream. They're not able to get to that point. They just kind of make do and get by, right? And I think that's a really kind of, I think it's an interesting look, and I think it's a unique one that's not always in these types of, formulaic kind of films, telling this type of story. So yeah, I just really liked the way that it ended, and he gets that deal from the Korean market, and you're kind of thinking, okay, like, now he's made it, now he's got this deal, and the family's going to be good. And then, right after that scene, you have Monica saying, well, I'm going to leave. It doesn't matter that you just got this deal. And then, of course, the fire happens at the end, and that destroys everything. So, yeah, it really is this kind of rebuilding at the end that they're going to now have to just keep going, right? And that's all that they can do. So anyways, I thought it was a really, really, nuanced kind of look at this. Now, I'm not saying that it's the first movie to ever do that or anything like that, for sure, but I believe it is still, at least better than taking the kind of, cliche, kind of tropey route of a lot of these other stories. So, really great. So several powerful themes intertwine throughout this film, and this is something I think a lot of the other Oscar films, at least the two I have seen, and then some of the other ones I've heard about and kind of learned about what they are about. I think this one has so many themes that so many people can relate to. I mean, I don't think there's a single person that couldn't relate to at least one of these themes in this film and really connect to this story. Even though, if you're not, an immigrant family, or, trying to achieve the American dream, or starting over, living in Arkansas, all this stuff, right? Some of these themes, right? So marriage, relationship struggles, that's a big one throughout, between Monica and Jacob. Assimilation with their new environment, right? That's a big one, in especially them going to the church, right? And they're the only Asian family there. And kind of, assimilating with their community, with this new kind of culture that they've really just been planted in, right? It's kind of this fish out of the water type of thing. But they are really trying to get used to it. They're trying to, make friends, trying to build this community around them, and really kind of settle in this new home. And I think that's a really powerful one. Obviously, the disconnect between generations, that's a big one as well, especially with David and the grandma. We see that throughout, again, I think that also is kind of having to do with embracing their cultural roots, right? And that's something that the grandma, coming from Korea, is really kind of disconnected. And even some of the film, she makes comments like that about, oh, you Americans and all this stuff, calling her own family Americans, and seeing them as something different than her. And they all kind of come from the same place, but of course the kids have grown up in America now. And so it is really kind of this disconnect, between between the generations, especially between David and the grandma, but also even grandma and Monica. Even just the single generation there has been different. Monica's upbringing has been, very different from hers, and the culture and the values, all that stuff has changed. And so I think that's an important one. And embracing the cultural roots, right? That comes from that. And especially, the biggest thing about this is, the grandma bringing the Minari plant and wanting to plant it in America. And then, of course, Jacob wanting the farm to be of Korean produce and Korean fruits, instead of, the typical American. crops and stuff like that. So yeah, you really see that throughout. So it's kind of this deciding to assimilate, but also hanging on to those roots that, are that mean something to them, and obviously mean something to the grandma as well, coming from there. So that's really interesting. What a home looks like, right? When they first get there, it's just a trailer and it's an empty field, right? Is this home? Does it have to be, a big house, in the middle of a city, or can it just be a small little trailer on this empty plot of land? So that's a really interesting one. One that I also kind of picked up on, I mentioned a little bit, was outcasts in society. And I think this is really depicted with Will Patton's character, the veteran. I think that's a really big one too, because it is, they are outcasts pretty much as well, in this kind of new community. And they seem to be adopted pretty well, right? I mean, I think there's, especially at the church, people are pretty welcoming of them, but people are not very welcoming of the vet. And the one scene specifically where they're on the church bus and the one kid is making jokes about him, walking with the cross on the road. And, that's a really hard-hitting, scene, kind of an emotional one, because you really do feel bad for the guy, and I think it is kind of this outcast and really kind of being accepted, right? That acceptance, and that's a big one, and Will Patton's character isn't really accepted, in the same way that even the Yees are, the Yee family of being new there, so that's definitely something in this one as well, and then lastly is obviously just adapting to new skill sets. Jacob is not a farmer. That's, not his background. He doesn't really have those skills, but he wants to learn and he really wants to pursue this new career and this new this new life, right? And so I think that's, again, something that really people can relate to, for sure. Any of these, probably all of these, some people could relate to. And it's just some really, really powerful stuff. And you don't see this all the time in films. And I really do think it's really great to see something like this depict that many relatable and really real themes. And that's where you definitely get the idea that this is based off a true story, and it is based off his upbringing, because these things are very real and, very easy to relate to in that way. So again, maybe that speaks to the writing as well. So a very wholesome film overall. Obviously, it's a great balance between the hard-hitting emotional moments and also the genuinely funny moments. As I said off the top, this one is actually really funny. I think you will laugh out loud, right? I think I did at a couple times. Especially the scenes with the grandma and David, right? Those scenes are some of the best comedy. Even Jacob and the vet character, Will Patton's character, I think there's some really great comedy in those scenes as well. So some really, good levity in this one, but also some really hard-hitting emotional moments. When that fire happens is obviously a big one. The big scene where the kids kind of chase down the grandma, who is feeling guilty and basically is just done. She's leaving the farm and she's leaving the family, and she's walking away, and the kids have to run after her and get her to come back. So just really that whole end sequence is just really emotional, really hard hitting, and even just the whole stroke a thing. After that in the movie, it's pretty much just an emotional one from there on out. And that's why the comedy works so great at the beginning, because kind of sets this tone, and then it really kind of changes toward the end of the movie. And I think that's really where the ending hits hard as well. In that, and it kind of turns right into this really dramatic, emotional, film. Whereas a lot of that comedy was kind of focused at the beginning, with that, but obviously there is emotional moments in the beginning too. I mean, obviously the marriage stuff is a constant kind of struggle between the two, Jacob and Monica, and how that affects the kids. So there's a lot of that stuff in there, and I really think it's a great balance between the two. I never really felt like it was out of place. I really felt like the tone was consistent, even though it was changing between these two kind of, I guess, genres, or two type of kind of themes or approaches to this one. So yeah, both work incredibly well throughout. Some really great stuff. I don't think there's any point in the film where it really feels forced or out of place. So really impressive there, and I think that really speaks obviously to how good this script really is. So next, I just want to discuss a couple criticisms I had with this film. Obviously, I've been very positive on it thus far. I don't think it's a perfect film, of course. It's close, right? But yeah, no, there are a couple things wrong with it. Now, I'm not exactly sure if these are objective things, that they really did bad on, or they completely misused this. That type of thing. I think these are more just things that I noticed personally that I think they could have been a little bit more, developed or a little bit improved, right, for this one. But I just want to discuss these anyways and kind of throw them out there. So first off, the main character is a little convoluted. It's a little unclear in this film because it really does seem like it's the little boy David, right? And obviously knowing the behind the scenes and knowing it's a semi-autobiographical story written by Lee Isaac Chung, you kind of had this idea, obviously, that Lee Isaac Chung is David, or David is Lee Isaac Chung, right? So in that sense, yes, David is our main character, and a lot of the events are told through his perspective. Another thing reinforcing this is the film opens on David, right? It is his face and what he sees out the car windows and that. So again, with that, it's pretty clear, okay, that he's the main character, but then we also have a lot of this film that's told from Jacob's perspective, where David's not there. And then obviously equally you have a lot of scenes where Jacob's not there when David's story is being told. So you almost have two main characters coinciding with each other. I would say more David than Jacob, but Jacob's perspective is still dominating this film and a lot of the story here. And again, a lot of the emotional kind of hard-hitting moments are for Jacob's character. And, obviously he's kind of the main guy that is the resilience, the perseverance, and those themes are really encompassed in his character. So, again, and also Stephen Young's nominated in lead actor for the film. So it does make it a little bit complicated here, and I maybe think that it could have just been a little bit more clear by focusing more on one over the other. Maybe you just kind of cut out a couple of the scenes there where Jacob is really the main focus and the main perspective, or maybe have David in those scenes, right? So we have that, our perspective character, and he's viewing Jacob, in that way and doing those things. So that would just be my one little thing. And I don't think this really hurt the film or anything. I just think it really could have been better if it was a little bit more clear there. And obviously you can't really have a child actor be the main character. I mean, that's kind of unheard of. Obviously you can, and it's been done, but stuff like the Oscars and the awards are not going to recognize the child actor as the main actor, or the lead actor, sorry. So that's why Stephen Young is there, and that's why he's kind of been advertised as that. But in a way, he kind of is a supporting actor in this film as well. So again, just kind of a different way of looking at things, and who our main character truly is in this film is a little bit unclear at times. So, some of the writing was a little convenient. I have, commented on the script and how well done it was, how well written it is. But there are a couple moments where I thought were just a little bit overly convenient. Just the biggest example I had was the ending there with leaving the grandma who just had a stroke, who just had a stroke and is obviously not herself, and is in pretty bad condition. They leave her at home alone when they go out to the city to take take David to the hospital. And of course, this then turns into her being home alone. She doesn't really know what she's doing, and she starts this fire accidentally. And of course, the fire ends up being this massive plot point at the end of the film. Now, this did seem a little convenient. Yes, obviously she's probably not fit to travel, so yeah, you can't really take her to the city. But then why didn't somebody stay home with her, right? Or they organize something where somebody is there with her to help her instead of just leaving her home alone. It just didn't seem like a realistic thing to do. At first it's like, oh yeah, okay, but then once she starts the fire and that becomes such a big focal point, it just kind of seems a little convenient that they just left her at home alone in the condition that she was in. And what did they really expect to happen, right? So Yeah, I just thought that was a little convenient, and it would have been fine. There are some other moments that are a little convenient here, but they don't have as much of an impact on the overall story as this one did. And so I think that's really how I picked up on it, and why I wanted to discuss it here. But yeah, so just a little convenient there, and maybe a little nonsensical for this family to leave her there. I mean, maybe even Jacob, I guess he was going to that Korean market to get the deal. So I don't know. Maybe you leave Anne at home with her, right? I don't know. It's a difficult situation, obviously. And of course, the fire, was not inevitable. They didn't know that she was going to start this fire when they left her. But anyways, it is just a little convenient there. The ending, I think, could have been even better if the grandma had died at the end. I think that would have been a little bit more impactful, and it would have made that last scene of the film even more impactful, like really, really hit hard. It really does hit hard already, especially, the last line in saying, grandma picked a good spot or something like that. I thought that was a really powerful line, and a really good scene to end the film on. But I think it really would have been better if she had died, and we get a little bit of a time skip there. I'm not sure how long it is. I would assume maybe a week or two, something like that. Not very long. But I think it would have maybe worked better if she had died in between that time skip. Maybe get one scene of, learning that information, and then we see that last scene of the film. I don't know. And I think a way, too, in looking at this is perhaps the family already sees her as, not dead or gone, but not, obviously, she's not her normal self after she had the stroke. And, maybe that is the way that they already see her. And so maybe her death wouldn't have been that impactful. But I don't know. I think to me, it would have been really hard hitting that last scene, and really kind of brought everything full circle with all the stuff that was going on with her. But yeah, I mean, in a way, once she has that stroke, she really isn't herself. And so maybe at that point, that is really just how the family viewed it. And that, is still a very emotional, scene, or a very emotional connection that they have. So anyways, that was just my thought there for the ending. But yeah, I really love that last scene. Really, really did. So anyways, with all that being said, let's end off here with some Oscars chances. What are their chances here for the Oscars? So I think they probably get 5 or 6 nominations here. I think they're definitely in for Best Picture, and something too with the Golden Globes, they're going to be up for foreign language film, right? But the Oscars, I don't think they are, because it's an American, like, this is an American movie, right? A24 and the production was American. So it is an interesting one, but yeah, no, it will be up for Best Picture for the Oscars for sure. I think it's definitely in there. Original screenplay, for sure. I think it should maybe win, to be honest. I haven't seen all the contenders yet, but this was just fantastic. So original screenplay. Best director. I think Lee Isaac Chung is going to get that directing nomination. Really hope he does. That fifth slot is kind of open right now. So I think he is going to be in there, and I think he definitely deserves that as well. Probably a lead actor for Steven Yeun. That's not guaranteed, of course, but I think he is really that front runner for that last spot in lead actor. I think he really has a good chance of being there, and I'd love to see it. I think he does deserve it too. Like I said, I'm not sure that he is necessarily a clear lead in this film, but if he's in that category, if he has to be there, I think he is definitely worthy of a nomination. Definitely supporting actress for Yo Jung-yoon, and I think there's a chance that she wins. She is absolutely fantastic in this film, of course, and there's no doubt in my mind that obviously that's going to be that's going to be a nomination there for her for supporting actress, especially because it's kind of a weak category otherwise. So maybe not though. Maybe not. I mean, there's a chance that neither Yeon or her get nominated, but I think there's probably a better chance that she does, for sure. But anyways, that would be really, really great to see. And then obviously score. I think score is in there too. The score for this film was really, really excellent. Really great. I didn't talk about that, but wow, the score, and also cinematography. I think they deserve to be there. I'm not sure that they will be. But the cinematography of this film is also excellent. So those are two things that I didn't really talk about. But yeah, score, cinematography, absolutely great. And definitely deserve the nomination. I think score is a for sure. That's a definite one. But I'm not sure about cinematography. We'll have to see for that one. And lastly, I just want to touch on this one. I said I'd come back to this one. Will Patton for a supporting actor nomination. I think he deserves it. Honestly, this performance was really, really great. And I think actors have gotten a nomination for less than what Will Patton does in this film. He's not a big part of it, but he is such a good job at making this character. You really kind of feel bad for him. But then also, he's funny. He provides a lot of the comedic relief at times. So I think, the balance between that is really strong in the writing of the character. But I think Will Patton brings another dimension to that really brings it out even more, that emphasizes it even more. So I really think he should be in the conversation. Maybe not necessarily get a nomination, but he should be in the conversation for supporting actor, in my opinion. But I haven't really heard anyone else say that, but that's just my opinion. I think he's absolutely excellent in this, and I think he maybe, should be in that conversation. I don't think he will be, obviously. He will not be getting a nomination for this, but really great job in that one. So anyways, guys, that'll just about do it for my thoughts on Minari. Again, love to hear your guys' thoughts on this one, what you thought of it. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Love to hear your guys' thoughts either way and discuss this one with you guys. Next up, I think, will be News of the World. I think that or maybe Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Those are kind of the two I'm looking at next. So next week, hopefully, we'll be back with that one. Really looking forward to the rest of these films and giving my thoughts on some more and of course, discussing them with you guys. So anyways, once again, thank you guys so much for watching this one, and we'll see you then in my next review.